Here we go, day 3 of SEC Media Days as we're live in Dallas, Texas. And we've got a lot to get to. Tennessee may be better defensive backs, so says Caleb Calhoun. But a big program other than that. The latest from the Vols, including an update on their running backs that we'll get to. Is Tennessee just fine with running backs? My takeaways from SEC Media Days. I don't think Oklahoma is ready, and I'm going to tell you why in just a bit. Also, Calhoun and Dave and Alabama, they will visit with the media, and I'm curious what you think of them moving forward. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, Banks and Jones. Also, Paul Finebaum, Josh Pate, Cooper Mays, Keenan Pili, all on the program today. So if you think that's pretty cool, then hit the like and subscribe button right now. SEC Media Days coverage brought to you by Work Trucks. Work Trucks' commitment to providing exceptional customer service, a diverse range of vehicles, and comprehensive solutions sets them apart in the industry. Work Trucks, your trusted partner for top-notch pre-owned work trucks and commercial vehicles with 2 convenient locations in Birmingham and Knoxville on Clinton Highway. When you start shopping for your next vehicle, you'll want more than just a dealership to sell you something, by the way. You're looking for your own vehicle. You'll want a partner in the process. That's why you'll also need to check out Volunteer Automotive Group. Go to vaultauto.com. So we thank Work Trucks and vaultauto.com for sending us to Dallas, Texas. As we've got a lot to get to, but I want to give Caleb Calhoun some credit right off the bat. First, hit that like and subscribe button. Caleb, I thought you nailed it. Yesterday, you talked about Tennessee's defensive backs, and I'm going to give you kudos because I want to revisit it. But good job on the defensive backs. I came away with the same takeaway that Tennessee's defensive backs are quietly confident in that building, which is what you spoke about yesterday while I was scurrying around getting interviews. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Yeah, seemed like you were having a lot of fun going around yesterday. Have you gotten tan in Dallas yet? Any tan?
You know, I have a pool over my shoulder. I don't know how to get in it. I don't know how to get in the gate. I haven't visited it yet, but I did manage to find the gym, so I'm doing okay.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, that was a big one. Was the defensive backs? There were a lot of low key. Look, we talked about this. Josh Heupel says is the master of saying a lot without saying anything. But you know this, Dave, as you being a good reporter yourself, you know this. If you ask the right questions, you can still get kernels of truth from them that they don't want to reveal to you. And Tennessee managed to do that a few times yesterday, if we're being honest. So I think people should be excited about defensive backs. We will get into that. But there's a lot of reasons for this program to be excited about that position specifically. Something I probably wouldn't have said. I thought there was a chance they might be better, but I wouldn't have said that definitively until yesterday.
Okay.
At the podium.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about Tennessee takeaways. Tennessee and what they did at SEC Media Days was impressive. They had great speakers. I didn't think Keenan Pili was overly comfortable being in that situation, but he handled it just fine. He's just kind of a quiet guy by nature. Omari's probably the best talker on defense. Cooper's fantastic. But the story was, and everybody asked, where's Nico? And it doesn't help that Oklahoma is bringing Jackson Arnold, who is also a red shirt. Well, he played significantly last year in a backup role, so he would be a sophomore. But it doesn't help that you're bringing an underclassman in, and you're willing to put him in front of the media, but not Nico. And I think Nico would have been ready. I'm just telling you, anyone out there can defend the decision not to bring Nico, and I get it. But the takeaway from the SEC media yesterday, and I'm sure you're not surprised by this, Caleb, was that where's Nico?
Yes, that was very clear. And that's why there were so many questions about it. I mean, think about it. Josh Heupel's a quarterback guru. 2 years ago, he had a guy who would have gone to New York as a Heisman finalist were it not for an injury. Many people believe that's because of Josh Heupel's system. Many people also believe that Nico Iamaleava, this is his prize recruit, the guy that he wanted to take Tennessee to the next level at quarterback. Meanwhile, yesterday, not just Jackson Arnold, but Carson Beck is there. Brady Cook is there. For the record, Jackson Arnold and Carson Beck are two quarterbacks who are technically underclassmen playing for coaches who are defensive specialists. So, they want to promote their defense. Josh Heupel is a quarterback guru, doesn't bring his quarterback. Again, we're all thinking that Nico's production should be second to none in the SEC this year. Otherwise, Tennessee's in trouble because everything about Tennessee is dependent on the quarterback. Him not bringing Nico was a red flag. But Dave, random question. Do you think he wanted it to be a red flag? Do you think that's what Josh Heupel wanted?
No, I don't think this was any sort of conspiracy whatsoever. I think this was old school logic, just as simple as that. And I respect Bill Martin, Tennessee Sports Information Director, and I'm sure he had some say in it. And I understand the reasoning. And there's some things that happened with James Pierce personally, nothing that he did wrong, okay? But personally, that I'm completely defending him. And I've changed my tune on that, right, Caleb?
I did not actually. So, that's intriguing.
Right. So I'm defending not bringing him. He went through something personally I can't get into. I'm not going to get into, but there's a reason he wasn't here. And he didn't do anything wrong. He did not do anything wrong, Caleb. So I want to be sure. But I understand not bringing him, but I just can't defend not bringing Nico anymore. But I think it's just old school logic. I think Bill and Josh Heupel and all those guys sat down and they said, you really don't usually bring freshman quarterback you don't bring quarterbacks that haven't played a lot unless they're juniors or seniors and they're kind of the next man up. And he's an underclassman. And I get all that, but man, it was conspicuously absent yesterday. And the frustrating part about it too, as a media member, again, I respect their decision, but as a media member, I think he would have done awesome, Caleb. I think he would have done fantastic.
Oh, he would have been great. He'd have been great. I'd have loved seeing Nico there. He definitely stands out in a way beyond the other quarterbacks, a little bit unique, and I think there would have been a bit of a splash for Tennessee. He could have stolen the show on Tuesday. I maintain that it's all about on the field, and I understand that, and maybe Josh Heupel fully believes that because none of this changes my philosophy, Dave, that Josh Heupel, Nico will be the biggest story in college football by October the 1st. Like, everybody will forget about, Deion Sanders in Colorado are going to take over again at the beginning. Everybody's going to forget about that. By October the 1st, Josh Heupel and Nico and Tennessee will be the most trending topics on every national media outlet. They will be too much fun to watch.
See that. All right. Now, the other bit of news that came out is from Tennessee's running back position, and we wrote about that on offthehooksports.com. Cam Seldon is still coming along a little bit. He's supposed to be the next big deal at running back. That goes back to spring of 2023. At what point Cam Seldon still hasn't been fully released in the summer workout? At what point is that a concern at the running back position?
It's a big concern. I think Josh Heupel and the staff are lying about their belief in Cam Seldon. I mean, I do. I'll say that up front. I think they're lying about it. I think they're just trying to tell themselves it's working. I don't believe in him. I don't care what people are going to be like, oh, well, coaches say this in practice, and I'm going to trust the coaches who are closer to the players. I'm going to trust my eyes and what I see on the field when they play, okay?
Well, no. My eyes have told me that Cam Seldon's a player, and I've seen him in spring, but that is spring. I was thinking you were going to go along the lines of his health, but you're going along the lines of just his ability.
His vision. He can't see a hole. Okay, that's a big problem. He cannot see a hole. He's got Trent Richardson vision. You don't just develop that in one off season. I'm sorry. I don't care what they tell me about practice, which is why if the running backs will be good, it will be because of Peyton Lewis, who was out in the spring because of injury himself. And if Peyton Lewis is healthy, I think Peyton Lewis could be their featured back. So there's still reason to believe in the running back situation. Josh Heupel was oddly touting Dylan Sampson more than I thought yesterday during his press conference at the podium. Talked about Dylan Sampson as a leader and things like that. I've never heard of an all-purpose back being that type of guy.
I have, of Dylan. As a matter of fact, Cooper Mays has shared that with us publicly way back when. Caleb, it may have even been before you and I started doing the Daily Show together. But he thinks Dylan Sampson is an incredible individual and incredible leader. But you're right, running backs usually just show up and tote the mail, don't they?
They do. I mean, it's
he's also listed now. Again, roster listings are very, very vague at times, but he's listed at 200 pounds, which isn't 215, 220, 225 like you would like him. So how much of the load do you think he can carry if Pate and Lewis, who I agree with you, I think is most likely the answer instead of Cam Selden, but who carries the load, or how much of the load can Sampson carry? 25%, 50%, 75%, Caleb?
I think Sampson is maybe a 30% type of guy, maybe 30 to 35% type of guy. I just don't think there's much he can do to shoulder too much of a load. I mean, it's again, he's an all-purpose back. That's what he is. He's not a guy meant to carry the ball every down, every play, and I just don't think he can do that.
I'm about to say something that's going to make Tennessee fans very, very happy, and I'm not doing so just to do that, but it's a fact. I think they view Dylan Sampson as a Marshall Faulk type, a guy to get out on the edge a little bit more, a guy to catch more passes, a guy to get in space. I think you'll see a little bit more of some stretch plays, some outside running plays. I think this is the type of back that Josh Heupel has never had before. So while he may get that percentage, 30% of the touches, I believe he'll get 50% of the production, both via receiving yards and rushing yards among the tailbacks out of the backfield. As a matter of fact, I'll go over 50%. When you add all that up at the end of the year, I think he'll be that good, and I think he'll be a borderline all-SEC player.
I think he'll be borderline all-SEC. I don't see Marshall Faulk. Marshall Faulk was able to shoulder the load for the Rams at certain times.
The way they utilize him, not the way they lean on him. Is that a good way of putting it?
Okay. That makes more sense. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The way they utilize him, I don't think we have seen. Listen, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, did they look comfortable with catching the ball out of the backfield? No, they looked like they were able to do it, but they didn't look like they excelled at it, did they?
No, they didn't.
Dylan Sampson is going to look like he excels at it. Like he's as comfortable doing that as he is running the football. Mark my words. Right there.
Wow. Okay. If what you're saying is true, that's insane. I'm just going to say that. That's insane. But like, I will say this as a pure all-purpose back, I could believe in Dylan Sampson. I just think that there's too many limitations for him elsewhere to ever be the type of feature back that you might want a guy like him to be. I put it this way. I don't think he could ever be a Darren McFadden who could literally do everything as a running back in college.
Totally agree. I don't think he can do a Marshall Faulk as often as Marshall Faulk did it, which was 35 times a game. So there's limitations there. But as far as touches, 25 times a game, I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. The poll question that is on our YouTube page, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button right now. After Josh Heupel's news on running backs, do you feel good about the position? You got very good, sort of good, I'm worried, I'm devastated. Those are your four options. Sort of good, 42%, very good, 33%. I'm worried, 17%. I'm devastated, 8%. So all that being said, that optimistic news that I just gave you, I am in the sort of good category, Caleb.
Yeah, I see. I noticed that too. I'm nowhere. I have not changed from my position.
I'm worried.
Before I'm worried, and
you're not devastated though.
No, not devastated, but I'm putting everything on the development of Peyton Lewis and what happens there. And I think Tennessee is in trouble without him. So we're just going to see how that goes.
All right, here we
go. I will say I'm much higher on the next Tennessee unit we're about to talk about.
Well, and so lead us into that. Go right ahead. Biggest takeaways from Tennessee. You mentioned the defensive backs. Is that where we're going here?
Yes, and I did a segment on this yesterday right after the show, right after Heupel was at the podium before the show ended. This was my final segment, Dave. It stood out to me that Heupel said, quote, "This is the deepest we've been since I've been here." But he said that generally about the team, but he picked right after a question about the defensive backs to say that. Yes. I think Heupel very much so believes that I think that was code for finally my defensive backs can carry the weight, so they're not going to hold us back the way they have been the last 3 years. I think that's what that meant, quite honestly.
Can I throw some things at you to challenge your take a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
This defensive backfield, I'm making a statement, not that I believe it. You can agree or disagree, and then I'll tell you where I stand. This defensive backfield is not as good without Tamarian McDonald and Wesley Walker, period.
I totally disagree. I 1,000% disagree with that. Tamarian McDonald I thought was overrated last year, and his PFF grades were never what they needed to be. Danico Slaughter seemed to be it seemed like he could never turn. Well, that was Tamarian McDonald. I wanted to get to Danico Slaughter. It just seemed like Danico Slaughter could never turn his athleticism, could never channel his athleticism to properly playing defensive back. And I actually was a fan. Yeah, and I was a fan of Wesley Walker, believe it or not, but I think they got some better weapons at safety now, so I understand why he went to the portal.
Yeah, I don't think that Wesley Walker had the overall athleticism. I don't want to sound mean, but I just think that's where they were with him. I'm going to throw some other defensive back challenges at you, brought to you by Don Self. State Farm customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. Greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126. Go to donself.net. That is donself.net. As far as those defensive backs, guess who I spoke to yesterday that agrees with you? Now, he has a subjective take, of course, but Omari Thomas completely agrees with you. His face, and I think I read people pretty well, Caleb. So I know he's not going to say, boy, our defensive backs are terrible. Good Lord, they're horrible. I know he's not going to say that. But the way his eyes lit up a little bit, he thinks they're going to be really good. Take that for what it's worth, but he completely agrees with you.
Interesting. Omari Thomas does completely agree with me. Omari Thomas said a lot of things that were revealing, speaking of that yesterday too, because he touted James Pierce's work ethic. It seems like Omari Thomas has been really the big brother to James Pierce and has really taken him under his wing, which speaks to Amari's leadership.
He absolutely has. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you haven't listened, so has Keenan Pili. You know who James Pierce works out with? Keenan Pili. Who Arian Carter is now working out with? It is Keenan Pili. And Keenan Pili should know something about being mature since he's 47 and a half years old.
47 and 3/4, Dave.
My bad. All right. Any other Tennessee takeaways before I want to get to the takeaway that I have overall, even more than the Vols, but it certainly affects the Vols?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is, again, I think that Josh Heupel, I'm with you, not bringing Nico. Actually, I believe what he said yesterday. I believe when he said it wasn't about Nico. It was about what these three players have meant to the program, and he wanted to show them the respect that he felt they deserved and that they had earned the right to go to Dallas for SEC Media Days.
So I'm cool with either of those reasonings. I don't agree with it nor like it, but I understand it. I think we can all agree.
Yeah, I mean, like when they say quarterbacks that have played limited, I pulled up my old SEC Media Days booklet, Dave. The coaches sent T. Martin to SEC Media Days before the 98 season.
I know. And the next year, Jared Lorenzo went as a true freshman. Trust me. I did the research. I just didn't have time to write it. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. My biggest takeaway so far in SEC Media Days, and please hit that like and subscribe button. My biggest takeaway, Oklahoma's not ready. I just don't believe that they are ready for the SEC. We know that Texas is, right? They've shown us enough. But I'm not sure that Oklahoma is ready. I want to point out a couple of things. If you look back at what Oklahoma did last year, a 10-win season, pretty good, right? You get excited about that. But Caleb, when you watched Oklahoma, what did you think about them last year? And I want to take a look at their schedule and then discuss what they got coming back, because I'm not sure they're ready for the SEC. And speaking to some of their media members, it seemed like they were just excited to give this thing a run. Well, it's kind of like a huge roller coaster. You better be ready, not just excited. It better be a little bit of both, or you're going to vomit on the first drop. What did you think of Oklahoma last year?
Oh, last year I thought that they got one fluke win over Texas. That game was a wild back and forth game, and I think if you play them 1,000 times, Texas is winning probably 750 of those times. I guess I should have said 75 out of 100. But still, so that wild win was really all they could rest their laurels on. They lost to Kansas and they lost to Oklahoma State. They lost their bowl game to Arizona. Their other wins, they didn't beat one other ranked team last year. And Dave, I got the same vibe from you yesterday just watching Brent Venables speak. He's very insecure. Now, he's not like insecure. I'm going to be fair to his character. He's not insecure the way Butch Jones was insecure. That was just an embarrassment of a human being, the way he was, Butch Jones. But Brent Venables is, for him to leak that, just volunteer that information yesterday. We've had a lot of NFL teams come and try to poach our staff. Who just volunteers that out there? You know?
Well, clarify that statement for those that didn't hear.
Brent Venables just volunteered at SEC Media Days that lots of NFL teams have been coming trying to poach staff members off of Oklahoma right now. And I'm like, really? Have they? Do I really? I don't really believe that. So I think you're just saying that. And there were just little examples of that yesterday. You know, him insisting they're ready for SEC play. Like, you're right. Texas isn't out here talking about we're ready for SEC play. They're just talking about whether or not they can win the SEC. Oklahoma's trying to make the case they're ready for SEC play and they'll be able to handle the schedule. And they just seem very insecure. And Brent Venables, it seems like a top-down thing coming from Brent Venables.
Well, and they barely beat UCF last year. That was about as fluky. I hate to call a 10-win season fluky, but my question is, too, I mean, why do you have Dylan Gabriel transfer out? And I understand that Jackson Arnold is their quarterback of the future. And by the way, I will give them kudos for bringing Jackson Arnold to SEC Media Days. But why does Dylan Gabriel, who was in the Heisman Trophy discussion at times, transfer out if that offense is going in the right direction? And let me offer you this as well. Going in the right direction is winning 10 games. I mean, that's something they have to do on a regular basis. And you have to do that with offense. Venables is a defensive coach. I just don't like the direction of this program.
Yeah, I've always said defensive coaches, if you're trying to be a national title contending team, you hire defensive coaches at places where you can easily wake up and get top 3 recruiting classes, like a Georgia or an LSU, right, Dave? But like, otherwise, you probably need to get a creative offensive mind. That is an issue with Oklahoma, and I'm just not. I think they're going to come back down to earth.
Well,
I got a couple other.
So you kind of alluded. Do they have a philosophical issue? Okay, I've got an issue. I've got a basketball issue, Caleb. I can't jump, and I'm 6 feet tall. Okay, so I can't play basketball at a high level. All right. I just wonder if there are limitations when you have Brent Venables in the modern day of college football because he's not an offensive coach and he's a defensive coach. That would be my concern if I'm an Oklahoma fan.
Yeah, and people like to say, "Oh, just hire the right offensive coordinator." Dave, as you know, that's easier said than done. You hire the right offensive coordinator one time, they'll get a head coaching job the minute you do well with them. I mean, look at what happened to Dave Aranda at Baylor, right? In 2021, he went 12-2, and then he fell to 6-7, and he fell to 3-9. Now, Jeff Grimes did remain offensive coordinator the whole time at Baylor during that moment, but in general, it's just defensive coaches can have that flash in the pan and then fall apart, and your offensive staff is never going to be that stable.
Let me give you some options. What will Oklahoma be in 5 years once they're completely indoctrinated into the SEC? They will be Alabama in its prime, Texas, who is contending right now. Or let me update it. Georgia, they'll be Texas, or they'll be Missouri, which is basically champions, true competitors, flirting as competitors. What's their ceiling?
Georgia, Texas, or Missouri, you said?
Yes.
Somewhere between Missouri and Texas. They won't be Missouri, but because Missouri goes 11-2 one year and it's like the greatest season ever. But they won't be that. But I think, which by the way, we're sticking on this topic. Eli Drinkowitz is one of my other takeaways from yesterday because I just have to point out something he said in a second. But
I can never get enough of Eli. Do you want me to do my what is he said?
Your Lou Holtz Eli, your Lou Holtz Eli
yes.
Drinkwitz combination.
Yeah, what was it? What was it? He
Stand
said?
on business.
Stand on business, Josh. All right. So what did you think about Eli Drinkwitz? Did he make a fool out of himself? If not, then I think he won today.
Well, he didn't make a fool out of himself unless you count blatantly lying as making a fool out of yourself.
Ouch.
Because he went out of his way yesterday to say that, I kid you not, Missouri doesn't rely on exterior noise or exterior factors to provide motivation. Now, Dave, that's the greatest lie ever told. If any coach relies on exterior noise, it's Eli Drinkwitz, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
This is the guy that literally changed his whole game plan to make sure he beat Tennessee to the potential detriment of other games last year. And then said, we stand on business, Josh, to the camera. And then, by the way, has gone around doing rounds, and he did it again yesterday, lying about why he said that. He said it was some deal with the team captain, and they were behind him, so he felt like he had to say it. Guys, he pays attention the most to outside noise. That's one of the biggest lies I've ever... Like, I get coaches lie, okay? But
now,
that was an obvious one.
Explain... A lot of people may not be aware, but explain that, because we did report this, that... We were told by a very well-placed source within the SEC that Missouri basically completely changed their defense to beat Tennessee, which means they may have kept a great defensive scheme in the closet for a while before they brought it out against Tennessee. That, to me, is not a wise move. You shouldn't put that much on one game, Caleb.
No, you shouldn't. Now, to them, it seems wise because they went 11-2 last year, and maybe they were happy with that. But maybe if they didn't change their defensive scheme so late, maybe they would have beaten LSU earlier in the year. Maybe they would have beaten Georgia and gone and played for the SEC title. Who knows? Maybe they sacrificed a potential shot at the SEC title just to beat Tennessee. Now, there's knocks on Tennessee for not changing their game plan to adjust. But I will say that, yes, it's very intriguing that Eli Drinkwitz did that, and it seems pretty uniquely obvious that he did. They were angry about Josh Heupel running up the score on them the year before. Josh Heupel did that because Josh Heupel was upset that he didn't get the Missouri job when it opened up after Barry Odom was fired at the end of the 2019 season. That's where this all comes down to. Because for those who don't remember, Josh Heupel was offensive coordinator at Missouri and really helped rebuild the program with Drew Lock after it had almost fallen into total disrepair when Gary Pinko retired. So I'm saying all that to say Eli Drinkwitz, let's forget the stand on business. This guy did a lightsaber video a couple of years ago. He did a thing playing with a guitar with a recruit 2 weeks ago. This guy's the king of thinking about outside noise. So, he got into a fight at a basketball game. He started talking trash to Tennessee players at a basketball game earlier this year. You don't do any of that if you're not thinking of outside noise, okay? You can't do all that and be like, I don't think about exterior noise. I'm an upstanding coach. I'm just, your professional Nick Saban who just focuses on my team. Okay, sure.
Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to hemphousechatwith2ts.com. hemphousechatwith2ts.com. The great comparison on the message board. Eli Drinkwitz is most like whom? The show represented by Banks & Jones.
Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
All right, one of the things that you knew was going to be asked at SEC Media Days of the Georgia contingent was about their...
Hold on, you asked... Wait. We teased who Eli Drinkwitz reminds us.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, it's Butch Jones.
It's Butch Jones. Yes, it's Butch Jones. All right, sorry, move on.
It was so easy. I slipped up. All right, Georgia and Kirby Smart were going to be asked about the driving issues. What did you make of their response as we look at the takeaways of SEC Media Days?
I thought that, again, it's what I believe the whole time. I feel like they've actually been handling things well. They've just been unfortunate with players not heeding the warnings. That's very creative, the NIL news. Did you hear about what the Georgia Collective is doing, which was revealed yesterday?
Yes, they're basically fining their players.
I love this. I love this. And I think
I love it, but I don't think it's going to have any effect. I'll tell you why.
You don't? I actually think it will. And I thought about this recently. I think what George is doing could instill a new level of discipline in college athletes that's never been there before. It was one thing back in the day, if you got in trouble, Dave, and you got suspended for a game, but your scholarship stays, right? You still got your scholarship. You might even not get suspended for an important game. Nowadays, just like the NFL, there's a potential monetary loss for a suspension. And honestly, I think that could drastically, we thought NIL was going to make discipline worse. It could make discipline better because if you're in the NFL,
it already has.
You think it already has?
Yeah, because guys know that they're more marketable if they don't get in trouble. Now, if you're elite like James Pierce, you make $1 million anyway. It doesn't matter. But let's take a player like Cooper Mays, who's probably a third, fourth round pick. So he's a mid-level guy. He'd like to make all the money he can while his football days are ahead of him. He's going to present the best possible face forward, and he's not going to get in trouble. And that goes with 99% of this team. I've been amazed, and I've spoken to Tennessee about how amazing it is that they haven't had more issues. And I think that is NIL related. And I don't know if they're doing fines yet, Caleb, but at the very least, it makes you think, am I marketable? Because I'm sure as heck not marketable when I'm on the strip holding some guy up for a cheeseburger.
Yes, that is very true. A lot of the crimes committed most of the time, let's be fair, by college athletes, it's not New Keith Richardson deciding I'm going to go hold up a gas station, which is still probably the dumbest crime anyone's ever committed as a college athlete. I got to be honest. I can't believe you'd be that stupid. Most of the time, the crime is, they got drunk and got into a fight, or they were playing around in cars like Georgia or something like that.
Smoky Mountain Red nailed it. Playing time is way more important to them. So listen, yes. I've said this a million times and you don't believe me. There are decisions made where a guy is 51% better than 49%, and you have to make a tough decision over who you're going to start. Well, if one guy has a penchant for getting arrested, that's not the guy you're going to start. So yes, and if you're not on the field, you're worth less in NIL. If they haven't gotten this message by now, they're crazy. Caleb, we use the excuse, too young, blah, blah, blah. But if somebody told me at 18 years old that if you write something really, really good, or you host this show and you do a really, really good job, we're going to pay you in addition to getting the credit that you've already gotten and your scholarship, you don't have to even fine me. And I have a feeling that the fines are going to be minuscule compared to the amount of money they're making. I hope I'm wrong, but I think they're going to be like the NFL, where the NFL, it's nothing to throw them $5,000, $10,000, or even $100,000. I'm afraid that's what the fines are going to be like in college.
Well, I mean, I don't know though, because
Travis points out, and I'm sorry, I was all over the place for media days. You can get caught in the weeds. Travis said that Kirby said he's holding 6 figures of NIL away from the players with traffic violations. Can you clarify that for me, Caleb? Is that 6 figures from one player or multiple players? Because surely one player hasn't been fined $100,000. And to me, just to lump it all together is kind of a weak way out.
No. He just said, from my understanding, is that over 6 figures have been withheld reportedly. Total.
I mean, that's like $5 per traffic incident.
In Georgia, you're right. But wait, let's be fair on this. Here's the other part. You're bringing up the NFL. Dave, an NFL fine is one thing, because not most NFL players, I don't want to get this idea out there because I think people get this misconception. NFL is the one league, Dave, and you know this. Players outside of quarterbacks, you're not making generational wealth in the NFL most of the time. Like other leagues, you're making generational wealth. NFL, you're making good money, but you better be smart until you get that big contract. But it's still relative to NIL in college. your fines in the NFL are not that big of a deal. NIL fines, yes, they're huge. They're huge.
If they're 10%, 15%, 20%, just don't make them like 0.5% like in the NFL.
Right. But 0.5%, like it's like taxes. If you pay 10% on your taxes and you're a billionaire, you're missing that money a lot less than if you pay 10% on your taxes and you make $1,000 a year.
Right. Let's just say James Pierce is making $1 million this year, for instance. Let's just throw that out there. If you fine him $10,000, it's no big deal. $50,000, it gets to be a big deal. $100,000, I mean, that's 1/10 of your pay. So it can be a great motivator, but here's the flip side. What coach is going to throw this out there? And there will be a coach that does this. Well, you think you're going to get X amount from this school, but in reality, they fine their players all the time, so they don't actually get that much. We will have that controversy soon.
I totally agree. We're going to see how it goes, but we will absolutely have that controversy. There will be players fighting. You might see some lawsuits over it, but I get someone's going to sue over their NIL money being withheld because they committed a violation. Book it.
Yep, absolutely. And you need to book an appointment with Medicare Misty, whether it's your parents or you that could use some free Medicare advice. She'll take care of you. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer, what to expect in 30 seconds.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Your thoughts on the University of Alabama under Kalen DeBoer. Here was my initial thought. They'll have some success based off Nick Saban's talent. They'll have some guys leave, but they'll be okay. And then what will happen? Well, you will see Alabama slowly slide. However, Kalen DeBoer's recruiting has been good. So perhaps I need to rethink that. What do you think of Alabama's short and long-term future as they try to move on without Nick Saban?
It comes down to the most important question facing the team this year, and I don't know if anybody's going to ask it, but they're both at SEC Media Days, so somebody should. Jalen Milroe is going there with Kalen DeBoer at 2 SEC Media Days. We talk about Kalen DeBoer's recruiting for next year, but Dave, you and I both know if Alabama slides bad this year, that recruiting will suffer. There's plenty of time for decommitments to happen and transfers and everything like that. So Alabama still has to maintain a success. And the question is...
And along those lines, it's easier to do. If things started to slide, they only won 9 games this year. With a first-year coach, you'd be more likely to have your entire class erode than if it were Nick Saban and you just had injuries or something bad happened that one particular year.
Exactly. What they do this year depends on how much of a fit Jalen Milroe is for Kalen DeBoer's system, because Kalen DeBoer's bringing him to SEC Media Days, meaning he's all in on Jalen Milroe. The question I want to know is, how is Jalen Milroe a fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense? Because Dave, I don't think he is. I really don't think he's a fit. I don't think Jalen Milroe. Look, last year, guys, for those who didn't watch, Nick Saban kept a harness on Jalen Milroe all year, and he played very well with limited reads and decision-making. It was very much like what David Cutcliffe did with T. Martin in 1998 through the first half of the season. And Nick Saban did that with Jalen Milroe. And I'm saying Nick Saban because he took over the offense, because Nick Saban that's why he's the best coach of all time, is he would do things like take over the offense. But I don't know for sure if Jalen Milroe, he is a first read and run guy. Michael Penix was a go through your progressions, not the most accurate under pressure, but he would go through the progressions. There was the hesitate with the fake draw and things like that they did. And Kalen DeBoer's, it's a spread offense still. Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. People think, and you know this, Dave, people automatically think running quarterbacks are a better fit for a spread offense. And it's one of the laziest takes in football, isn't it? That running quarterbacks are fit for a spread offense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in some cases, in some cases, it's borderline biased. I don't want to use the word, the racist word, but and sometimes you just look at a guy and you think, oh, he should be mobile. Well, no, he's not. And if you look at Michael Penix from last year, I mean, he was the exact opposite of Jalen Milroe. Milroe is a better runner. Penix is a more accurate passer. They're just two very different players. I mean, I understand and like the Kalen DeBoer hire, but I don't know that it's going to work and last a long time. But I think what the thing that you have to factor in that Kalen DeBoer is not ready for is, can he have a unique, insightful game plan each week? Because don't you think that Nick Saban did that 99% of the time? He knew what the other team was going to do and how he could counter it. Sure, it was the Jimmies and Joes, but there were some X's and O's with Nick Saban as well.
Yeah, that was Nick Saban was the best at that. I don't think Kalen DeBoer has to do that. Remember, he doesn't have to be Nick Saban or not. I don't think anybody's asking him to be Nick Saban. I actually don't think Kalen DeBoer has to do that, because I think Kalen DeBoer, we're seeing it with Josh Heupel. You can have success if you just run a standard offensive system. Josh Heupel didn't change his game plan week to week. He basically does the same thing, and he just knows no one can stop it. The question,
my point is with Kalen DeBoer, you have to prepare for a Josh Heupel offense one week and a Kentucky offense the next week. The Pac-12, he was more talented, and I thought they were more vanilla throughout, and that they did the same thing. That offense and what they did in the Pac-12 was more commonplace. I think it's more versatile in the SEC.
Well, I think that's where, I mean, again, Kalen DeBoer is turning everything over to Kane Womack, the former South Alabama coach, to handle that. So that's where the defensive coordinator hire is crucial. I think you and I both agree that defensive coordinator hire for an offensive coach is much easier than an offensive coordinator hire for a defensive coach. Is that fair to say? A lot of times.
Very fair.
So, yeah. So it depends on what Kane Womack's able to do. Womack has a lot of credibility and a lot of experience. He worked with Kalen DeBoer at Indiana. My big question is, I have thoroughly researched Kalen DeBoer's offense, and I still can't figure out what was so unique about his spread that made him so successful everywhere. I can usually kind of point to things that this made them successful. They were doing this when nobody was doing this. It just seemed like a generic spread, almost like how Butch Jones's Smash Mouth spread was. And I'm like, it's not unique, but it's been successful. But yes, the whole season's going to come down to whether or not Jalen Milroe can run this offense, because I still don't believe he can. I'm not a believer in him. Last year didn't convince me anything of him. Last year, he almost went to New York because of Nick Saban taking over that offense. And that was a really standout, interesting way things played out. There were some other people, Dave, at SEC Media Days today that though are struggling a little bit more than Kalen DeBoer. And Billy Napier's at SEC Media Days today with Graham Mertz. And I would just ask, like, what does Florida have to do this year for Billy Napier to keep his job? And I don't know if I answer that question with Billy Napier, but I would assume they need 10 wins, right?
No, I think you keep his job with 9.
So what do we even ask Billy Napier?
But let me clarify. I think we're having what they call a mute point in Mascot, Tennessee. I don't think that it matters, because I don't think he's even going to win 8.
Okay, fair enough. What do we even ask Billy Napier? Like, how much better is Graham Mertz? Like, how much have you cleaned up your issues?
We heard about how detail-oriented he was. How about, have you picked up a Trapper Keeper endorsement? Are you old enough to remember Trapper Keepers?
Oh, absolutely. Those things were balling, man. They were balling. I loved them.
Did you know they're back and they're like super expensive?
Seriously?
Yes, you can go. They're like the lunch boxes. Those are back too. You can get a Superman lunchbox for like $89 for your kid to take to lunch.
So is there really even any question about Florida? Because we just think they're bad. Like I'm like, what is going to lead us to, like, it's very vague. Hey, where have you improved this year? I can't really go anywhere specific with Florida. I guess the biggest one is, how do you navigate this brutal schedule you have? I'll give Billy Napier a break on that, because he's got a brutal schedule. The other one, Dave, that is the interesting one is Mississippi State is here, and Jeff Levy is going to be there. I would just ask, how unique is his offense? Because Dave, I think Jeff Lebby is the next brilliant offensive mind in the SEC, and I think he might be a better mind than Heupel or Kiffin.
Interesting. Josh Pate, by the way, likes you a lot. We'll have him on the program a little bit later. He thinks you do a fantastic job.
Oh, thanks.
And he said that. Well, he said I did a good job too, but then it would just sound like I was bragging. So, but guess what game he picked as Tennessee's key on the schedule?
Well, let's save that. We still have another.
Okay, hold on. I want to get to this before we finish Alabama, and then we'll go where you want to go. But the poll question is up. What is Tennessee's key game this season? Vote now. Alabama gets 23% of the vote. Oklahoma, 64% of the vote now as they're moving all over the place. Georgia, about 15% of the vote. He said he thinks it's Alabama. Now, I would tell you right now, that's a sign that Tennessee's program has hit another level. When the Alabama game is a swing game and not just a, oh my gosh, hope you can win game, that to me, I don't even know if he meant to, but Josh Pate, I thought, spoke absolute volumes when he said those words.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't know if that speaks more about Alabama falling or Tennessee rising, but I'm with him on that. Tennessee, Alabama is their key game. Alabama's coming to Knoxville. Tennessee has transcendent talent at quarterback in Nico. But I do think it's still Oklahoma. And the reason I think it's Oklahoma is because I've thought about this just from a mentality perspective. And I might even go NC State. I'll be honest. And here's why. I keep going back to that Pittsburgh game 2 years ago. And I just think, getting over that first hump when you're questioning what type of team you have does wonders for you the rest of the year, doesn't it, Dave? And I just think that, I think Tennessee, to go back to 98, I just bring it up, they got past Syracuse for a lot of, I think you were covering them at that point. I think there were a lot of red flags after Syracuse, right? Like, oh, this team may not be ready because no one knew how good Syracuse was. But then when they beat Florida, didn't you just feel like after the Florida when you're like, it's a wrap, they're winning the national title, it's over?
I felt the first twinge of destiny. I wouldn't say that it was a wrap. I mean, I thought this could be special. Honestly, the first thing that went through my mind was that, and the other thing was that don't let up because this doesn't define a season.
Yeah, that's fair. I can see
that.
Because
you could let up, and then you're like, oh, we beat Florida. It doesn't really matter. And they didn't do that. So I will get, because it's early in the season too. So I give them kudos to that.
But the mental hurdle to get past Florida, just want to add this, I think is what allowed them to overcome the Jamal Lewis injury and blow out Georgia the next week. I think that they just knew that they were I think getting over Florida, they knew they were better than everybody else on their schedule by that point.
And Philip Fulmer will tell you, to your point, the way it progressed, that Georgia was the game that he realized that they had something special. I mean, out of all the games, Florida, Arkansas, Syracuse that we could point to, he points to that Georgia game and the way they played as a sign that they could be special. So a monster show on tap today.
Still got to talk about.
We will. We'll do all that. Paul Finebaum, Josh Pate, Cooper Mays, Keenan Pilley. What other takeaways you got? How about the stars at night are big and bright?
So the biggest one is.
You didn't do it. Have you not seen Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure?
Nope, sorry. The other biggest one for questions is we're not asking if Texas is taking over today. I don't think anybody's questioning if Texas is ready for the SEC. I don't think the SEC – I'm not one of those that – I know you interviewed Josh Ford on Monday, Dave, and I talked about it yesterday where Texas isn't ready for the fact that they're not the big dog on campus in the SEC because they're used to strong Army conferences and they have been doing that for 30 years. But I do think just from a talent and ability perspective, they are ready to compete in the SEC. The question is, can they maintain their level of dominance in the SEC? And can they – it's that. And also, do you think Texas understands that the SEC won't fold to them the way other conferences did? Does Texas know that yet?
Yes. If they don't, they're going to find it out. I mean, they're not going to try to break out a Longhorn network.
No, but they're already trying to have conversations about banning the horns down sign for teams, other teams.
Well, listen, you're also not supposed to have artificial noise, but the cowbells are pretty damn cool. Okay? Even if you don't like Mississippi State, if you've been to that stadium, you're like, this is cool. I don't care. I mean, for a program that's like second, third tier of the SEC, this is cool. So if you don't like horns down, then you need to get a box of Kleenex, okay? And you need to take yourself somewhere private and wipe those tears away, because horns down is just fine.
But the SEC literally came out yesterday and had to release a statement that they won't penalize teams for doing the horns down. Now, again,
that's a stick it to Texas.
I wouldn't even have released a statement. I would have been like, if someone asked me, I just would have like, why would we do that? Why would we penalize anybody for that? Why is this even a news story that the horns down sign is an offensive gesture? And Texas, I think, is getting a culture shock that you can do that. I think they're actually shocked that teams are doing that and allowed to do that, because they are very much like, we're Texas. You don't cross us, and we can do what we want because they are now, put it this way. For those who don't study the history of politics, I'm not getting partisan or anything like that, but a lot of local congressmen across the country are big dogs in their own, when they're like mayors and things like that, local politicians are big dogs in their own city. And then one day they decide to go to Congress, and they think they can run the country the way they ran the city. And they realize it's a much bigger pond you're in when you go to Congress than it is when you're a mayor of a town.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that. Want to remind you that our coverage of SEC Media Days is brought to you in part by our fantastic friends at Work Trucks. All about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle right now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks: cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you, or just like Caleb, and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, if we can put this in the message board, just go to worktrucksllc.com. That's worktrucksllc.com. I mean, you can't risk it with equipment that burns your time. Work Trucks has vehicles you have to have. So what do we got coming up next, Caleb, on this loaded show?
Guys, we got we're going to show you a couple of interviews that Dave did with Paul Finebaum and Josh Pate, and we got Cooper Mays, Keenan Pearley, and we're going to talk about the Big 12 and Florida State later in the program.
What did you think about Josh Pate giving you a little bit of love? Said he watches the show often. Would you appreciate that?
I did. I'd love to. I like a lot of his takes, and I disagree with him on some other ones. So, it's Josh Pate's better than me. He's great at covering college football. Little diplomatic sometimes because, he criticizes some of the power players running. I like to call them out by name. I like to name the power players. If I don't like you, you're going to hear it from me.
Well, that's fair, especially now that they're getting paid. I can't really argue with that. Again,
no, I'm at the administrators. I'm at the administrators running college football. I'll call them out by name, the incompetent ones. I'm not just going to say, the administrators are doing this wrong. I'm going to say this specific person is doing it wrong.
Check out Volunteer Auto Group at volauto.com. Winners shop here like the Vols. I'm over there, and on the Calhoun location, there's practically a Tennessee player in there each and every time I'm over there. They proudly support the Vols, and Volunteer Auto Group supports Tennessee athletics as well. Just go to volauto.com and you can get a free credit score. You can, they handle financing. They handle everything. The #1 pre-owned dealer in Knoxville. Hundreds of SUVs, trucks, cars, and vans to choose from on Calhoun, but also they have locations east Lenoir City, Sweetwater, and out in West Knoxville. So check them out. We appreciate them. Winners shop here. Volunteer Auto Group. Go to volauto.com. Coming up on the program, we continue to get bigger and better. It'll be Paul Finebaum up next. We'll talk a little bit of Bama. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation, and will continue to be, of Off the Hook Sports, represented by Banks and Jones.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Welcome back to the program. It is Caleb Calhoun here with Off the Hook Sports. We are going to start going ahead and getting our interview set up. Let's pull up Dave speaking with Paul Finebaum. Now, he spoke with Paul Finebaum on Tuesday about something very interesting, which is battered Vols syndrome, which we've all heard of. We all know it has existed for a while. And Dave and Paul Finebaum had some very interesting takes on that. So we're going to go ahead and pull that up here. This was Dave Hooker speaking with Paul Finebaum on Tuesday. Let's see if I can get this up. Well, guys, I'm having trouble pulling it up. Just give me 1 second, okay? Sorry about this. Oh, more technical difficulties. Don't you just love these technical issues? Sorry, I just need 1 second. I'm going to try to pull this up again. Just give me a second, guys. Apologies in advance. We have Paul Finebaum. We have Josh Pate. We have Cooper Mays. We have Keenan Peely. We also have more talk of FSU and the Big 12. So still a lot to talk about, a lot to get to, a lot of exciting things happening right now. If I could just pull this up. And I'm having trouble still. Okay, here we go. All righty. Now we got it rolling. Let's get it going. This was Dave Hooker speaking with Paul Finebaum on Tuesday.
Well, you know who this guy is. It's Paul Finebaum, joined right now on Off the Hook Sports. And Paul, we certainly appreciate the time. How many SEC Media Days is this for you?
Well, my first one was 1985, the first one. So I think that would encompass almost 40 years.
That's a few years. Have you thought about how much longer you want to do this?
I try not to, but I have a feeling it won't be that much longer.
Well, the crazy thing is you've always got something new, and this year it's Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the ties between Oklahoma and Josh Heupel. Given where I'm from,
They seem strained now, but what do you think long term of those?
I was been in Norman twice in recent weeks, and his name comes up just sitting around. People out there really have tremendous respect for him, and I think it's not. If I could speak for Josh Heupel here,
He doesn't say anything himself, so he needs to.
It's not really an Oklahoma issue. It was a Bob Stoops issue. And I'm not saying that Bob Stoops isn't part of that program. He's still very respected. But the fact that Bob Stoops handpicked Lincoln Riley has been like one check mark against him because Lincoln is despised out there now. And that's really that was what happened. They replaced Josh with Lincoln Riley, who, by the way, two Heisman Trophy winners and a couple of playoffs. But I think when Tennessee gets out there in a few weeks, the reception is going to be thunderous. And I think whatever happened in the past will be a thing of just that.
When I started in this business, and maybe you too, we were a bit naive. The coach told us something, we just believed it. I actually, though, believe that Josh Heupel is dedicated to the University of Tennessee and sees it as a destination job. Do you agree with that?
I agree. He's got a really fantastic boss, and the person that, let's say that didn't work out, which I think he will because they just gave him a 6-year contract extension. Joe Castiglione, he's not going to be around much longer as the AD. So I think he would be. I think Heupel would probably be very hesitant to go out there with somebody who won't be there to be with him. Joe told me President David Warren and Bob Stoops were together there for 20 years at the same time. That's continuity, and I think that's the most important thing a coach wants. It's not how much money am I going to make, because they all make an absurd amount of money. It's not is Tennessee versus Oklahoma, is one better than the other. They're both at the top of the heap. It's who do I trust? And I think considering Danny White hired Josh twice now, that's who we trust.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Can you discuss the high that Tennessee's on right now? I don't know if you ever believed in battered ball syndrome, but it was out there. Is it dead now?
I think it is, and I think the fact that the baseball championship was really significant and symbolic. But it was funny. I said something about Lane Kiffin a few weeks ago, and he reacted by saying, "Oh, you guys at Tennessee just won a natty. Why are you so mad?" I mean, so it's what happened with Vitello's team is part of the conversation encompassing Tennessee. But I think Tennessee football, which is obviously phenomenal shape. I felt like last year was a disappointment, but it was still a pretty good year by most coaches' standards who have been at Tennessee in modern history.
Have you put out your predictions yet for the season? Is that
I think Tennessee is. I mean, I think you have this very predictable and overstated Texas following Georgia, and then maybe Alabama, Ole Miss. I think Tennessee is on that next rung where if they can turn a game or two, and I think it really is the Alabama game. I think if Tennessee beats Alabama, and I think it's certainly possible, then they go from 9-3 to 10-2. And I don't think 9-3 is where you want to be trying to get into the playoffs. It could get you in if you had some big win at the end of the year that tells you. But I think you want to be at 10-2. And if you look at Tennessee's schedule, we know Georgia. The Oklahoma game is tricky. And I think Alabama is a game that Tennessee has to win. And I'm not. It's hard to predict that game yet because there's so many intangibles. But I think Tennessee is on the edge of the playoffs right now.
Paul Finebaum? You know him of the SEC Network and ESPN. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Off the Hook Sports. More after.
That was Paul Finebaum. Give a few interesting takes. Paul Finebaum, just full disclosure, for those who don't know, I'm sure everybody knows, but I just want to be very clear, is a Tennessee grad. So you could say he's biased to the Vols, but he's been tied to Alabama for 30 years now, and he's been covering them in Birmingham with his radio show that he did for so many years. And he's been very open about different programs at different times. And he thinks Josh Heupel's committed to Tennessee, and he's very tied to the inside. And Dave has been telling us that, guys, too. If Josh Heupel is committed to the Vols, that's a really big statement, honestly, because Josh Heupel, I mean, you would think you'd want to go back to his alma mater. I've always talked about the whole Bob Stoops situation, and Paul Finebaum brought up a great point I didn't even think about. Oklahoma's athletic director situation is kind of in flux right now. They got an older athletic director, and you may not want that situation as a head coach when you want the stability. The battered Vol syndrome thing, it is very intriguing, and he made a great point about the College Baseball World Series, because the reason that's so relevant is even last year, Tennessee, even up until the College World Series, Tennessee had a top 3 athletic department, if you look at the Directors' Cup standings and things like that, and they kept knocking on the door in every sport, and they were just unable to break through. Now, finally, with the College World Series, they break through, they actually get a national title, and it's kind of one of those where once you get that monkey off your back, maybe you can start winning a little bit more. An example I use is, in the mid-90s, Tennessee would get blown out by Florida. They finally beat them in 98, 20-17 off a last-second field goal. And yes, they lose in 99 and 2000, but it was close both times, and they go and win in 2001 in the Fulham or Spurrier rivalries. So I think that when you get over that hump, that one mental hurdle, it affects the rest of the team, and I think it affects the fan bases too. I still think battered Vol syndrome is a thing in football. Football is a different animal altogether. A baseball championship is not going to outweigh that. You're talking about a program that had a decade of dysfunction. 2 years ago was on the verge of reaching the college football playoff and had a just bizarre blowout loss that nobody could explain to South Carolina. So I understand there's still the issue of battered Vol syndrome. I mean, heck, they lost to Florida in 2020. They lost to Florida last year, which just doesn't make any sense in 2023 because they were a significantly better team. So there's a lot of reason to still have battered Vol syndrome. Okay. This team has a lot of questions, a lot of things we don't know, but I will say that Paul Finebaum thinking it's over does carry some weight. Now, again, Paul Finebaum was more tied to Alabama during the decade of dysfunction. Even though he's a Tennessee grad, he was much more connected to Tennessee during the majors years. So I think that he may not be as deeply tied to the program to understand it as some other people. But I do think it's going away. And depending on what Tennessee football does this year, it could go away permanently. We still don't know yet. And also, again, battered Vol syndrome, for those who don't know, was a thing in the 90s. I mean, fans felt that they kept knocking on the door in football for years, during the late major years and throughout the prime of the Fulmer years, and then they just couldn't knock it down. They knock it down in 98. You think battered Vol syndrome's over, it's done infecting the program, and then they haven't won an SEC title since then. So you just really never know how these things are going to work out. It's very hit or miss. I do think that the big takeaway from Paul Finebaum's interview with Dave, though, is him thinking Josh Heupel is committed to Tennessee. And the athletic director situation is a big reason. The Bob Stoops situation is an obvious one. And you're right. I think at some point Oklahoma will cut bait with Bob Stoops just to try to bring Josh Heupel back if he continues to have success, because as Paul Finebaum pointed out, Lincoln Riley's no longer popular in Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley was the person that Bob Stoops hired to replace Josh Heupel as offensive coordinator in 2015 before he was then promoted to head coach of Oklahoma, and now he's since bailed. So that's hurt everything, and the lack of success Bob Stoops had and the lack of success Lincoln Riley had, and I mean lack of national titles, and how things played out down the stretch is going to have people leaning more towards Josh Heupel as time goes on. But you got to question the stability of the athletic department, and no one knows how that's going to work out at Tennessee, which is why at this moment there's plenty of reason to believe Josh Heupel is committed to Tennessee long-term and not going back to his alma mater, which is interesting. This next guy we're going to bring up, Josh Pate, spoke with Dave Hooker also about playing as Tennessee in the new EA Sports College Football 25 game, and also the important games on Tennessee's schedule and what to expect from the Vols this year. Josh Pate says that with Josh Heupel, he said this a while back, that they could be a perennial like playoff team, like sneaking in and upsetting teams. I think Tennessee has higher expectations than that. But let's get his thoughts as he spoke with Dave at SEC Media Days recently. Here is Josh Pate talking with Dave Hooker. We'll get this set up now.
Excited to visit with this guy. I've been wanting to talk to him for a bit because I'm not just going to stroke you or pat you on the back.
Good.
You have a unique talent set, my man. You're killing it. You're doing a great job. I absolutely love what you do.
We are trying, and I traffic in your stuff a lot. So I of course feel mutual. Feeling is mutual there. It's just weird to like I'm used to seeing. There's Dave. Let's see what he has to say. I'm always looking at a screen, and then all of a sudden you're just walking down the corridors here. And, he's a real person. He's got arms. He's got legs. My goodness, look at that.
We'll be replaced by AI within 3 years.
Could be 2 weeks. Could be 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm sure it's coming.
Right. Every Tennessee fan wants to ask you what you think about Nico. You maybe heard of him.
I have, yeah.
And I think you played the EA Sports game.
Mm-hmm.
Have you played with him yet?
We played. It's not funny to you guys. EA gave us clearance to play with their top 25 teams.
Okay.
Somehow, some way, Tennessee is not a top 25 team. And I want to stress, according to our fine friends at EA, wonderful job on the game. But notwithstanding, the rankings were a little suspect. So we didn't get to play with Tennessee. Oh. Now, the real life human Nico, I have thoughts about him. We didn't get to play with him in the game. But I found it interesting. When we went over there in the spring, we spent the day there, talked to Hype, and then you talk to as many staffers as you can. So it was really weird how everyone talk about better they feel defensively, mentality, and yes, they feel like they've got better players. And then I want to ask about Nico. And anytime you're around a program that has like a high-profile quarterback, they almost take for granted that all the questions have been asked. So they actually don't lead with talking about him.
Sure.
So when they go, of course, yeah, we can talk about him too. And so talked about his physical skill set. He wouldn't be there if he didn't have that. What I thought was noteworthy was Josh Heupel sort of voluntarily continuing to pound the table for the intangibles, which normally we hear about Carson Beck or someone like that, someone who's been in the program. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, he's been in the program a long time. So we know that we've got what we need from the neck up. We hope we have what we need physically. But they're so adamant about that guy coming in the NIL era where you have concerns that maybe the mentality not where it needs to be. Maybe the motivation wasn't what it needed to be for him to come here. Maybe it's just a mercenary deal. None of that was present at all. And conversely, they're talking about him the same way like down at Miami. Different situation because that's a transfer, but the moment they walk in the door, it's really noticeable who kind of grabs the program by the shirt collar and it's mine now. And so that doesn't guarantee anything, but as we've seen in the past, you certainly don't have a shot of winning a league like this without that.
No, it's weird. Outside of that building, I believe inside that building we started the bowl game. But it almost feels like a returning starter inside the building when you talk to these people.
I would agree. If you didn't know any better, so if you had just been introduced to college football, let's say you're an NFL guy, so you know the game, but you don't know the sport of college football, and you went on that trip with me, or you lived in the market, and you just listened to the way the staffers talk on and off the record about him, you would think, what does that guy have, 2 years under his belt starting or something like that? That's kind of the point that I was trying to make too, is the way they talk about him is very atypical for a first-time starter. It's normally an entrenched guy who's got multiple years of service. So, there's all this talk all the time. Everyone talks about intangibles all the time, but intangibles just like it's a word people throw out and have no clue what they're talking about. When you have it, though, it makes all the stuff come together on Saturday. When you're just watching and we call it clicking or we call it synergy. Well, that's a nice buzzword. But all that means is those intangibles are there, both from an individual and a team aspect. And when you got it, amazing things can happen. Everybody's talented to certain degrees. Everyone's talented. How many times do we see 5-star quarterbacks not pan out? Here's a fun exercise. take the current active 5-star quarterbacks, the guys that were 5-star out of high school, and ask yourself how many of them have truly played in their college career at a 5-star level. The list is very short. And I don't think that's because the recruiting industry whiffed on their physical capability. I just think it's because there's that intangible factor that's tough to master. So if you have it, you don't take it for granted.
I think there's also that pressure too, of being that, and he seems to cope with that well. Your surprise team in the SEC will be on the job.
Do you think? I don't think Missouri qualifies. I'm going to go Texas A&M as my surprise team. Okay. I think they've flown under the radar. I think Elko's hire flew under the radar because I think DeBoer going to Alabama sort of, muddied the water a little bit. Not in a bad way, but it's just that's where all the oxygen in the room went. And Elko goes to a place that's very important to remember. He doesn't have to rebuild. Pretty rare to see a coach fired. It's not a retirement like at Alabama. A coach got fired, which normally means you got to torch the barn, kill the rat, so to speak. You got to rebuild it from the ground up. He doesn't need to. There are certain overhauls that need to be made, but just bringing a guy in that understands the organizational aspect, which his predecessor I don't think ever did, and he does, that's a godsend. But also, this is a guy who, from an eval and development position, nailed it at Duke. He's not going to forget how to do that. He just gets bottomless resources added to the coffers there. So I'm excited to see what he can do down the road, but also there's an outside shot that they're in the race way deeper into the season than anyone expects even in year one.
Just a little bit before we say that, Nick Saban walks by. It's going to be weird being around the conference for that minute.
It is, and it's going to be doubly weird to hear him do things like he did yesterday, where he predicts. I don't know if Bama's going to make. I don't trust the secondary depth that I recruited. I don't trust that. That was very interesting.
It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Josh Pate does an absolutely phenomenal job. I'm Dave Hooker.
That was Josh Pate on interviewing with Dave Hooker. Some very interesting things. He does seem very high on Nico Iamaleava and the intangibles. I don't think that was a vague thing he said. I've heard some similar stuff too, but I've also heard some questions about him being a little shy. That's absolutely something that has to be addressed by Tennessee if Nico Iamaleava is going to pan out to be the quarterback they want him to be. At the same time, Texas A&M is a surprise team in the SEC. I agree. And Derek Owen points out he agrees too. Yeah. The biggest reason I agree, Josh Pate's this is where he's more diplomatic than me. Josh Pate is not unfriendly to coaches. He oftentimes is level head should prevail, even when coaches make dumb mistakes. I am the opposite. I am like most of these coaches should have already been fired and never been hired to begin with because I just don't think highly of them. And so I think there was always a market in football for a coach with book smarts, academic smarts, who actually understands the game, because there is an understanding of probabilities when you're a head coach. Mike Elko is an Ivy League grad who understands the game of football. So I just think in general, because of that, his wits will be so far ahead of so many of the other people coaching, provided he doesn't try to micromanage too much, because also you can struggle at your job even if you're smart because you're trying to micromanage too much. But I think Mike Elko's wits are so far ahead of the average IQ of an average coach that I think little basic in-game decisions will always favor him and Texas A&M while he's there. And I think that's an underrated thing that a lot of people are not paying attention to, which is that, again, guys, most coaches are former athletes. Most former athletes aren't required to use think on their feet level intelligence. It's why John Adams and I have our football IQ segment every fall. They make basic probability decisions that anybody of above average intelligence would know is not the smart thing to do in that moment. And the truth of the matter is, it's because many times they are former athletes getting paid to use their minds because of their experience as former athletes. The truth is, if you're going to get paid to use your minds, it should be based on your mind. And more often than not, that's not the case with football. And it shows itself time and time again on Saturdays and Sundays where coaches just embarrass themselves with decisions they make. And I don't just mean the Mario Cristobal decision last year to run a play when all you have to do is take a kneel down, although that remains one of the most low IQ decisions any coach has ever made. And I don't know how anybody can still believe in Mario Cristobal for that. But that is that's a very great point by Josh Pate. Derek asked if A&M plays the Horns because that may be upset city. Derek, you are right. That could be. And yes, they do. And don't give me any ideas. Josh Pate might be right. I might be betting on Texas A&M. So this is a very interesting point. And it is because they have talent and they have a coach with a level of wits about him that immediately puts him way ahead of the vast majority of coaches in sports. I'll just say that. I'm sorry for being mean and unfair. People may come at me for that, but truth of the matter is that is how this works. All right, when we come back, we got 2 more interviews Dave did with 2 of the guys at SEC Media Days that were representing Tennessee. We're obviously talking about Cooper Mays and Keenan Peely. A lot went down there, so we're going to talk about those, and we're going to see who else we can get. We actually have a few other interesting interviews that was going on. So, in 2 minutes to talk about Dave's interviews with the Vols 101 at SEC Media Days. Let's get that going. 2 minutes. Stick with us.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. We just recently covered Dave interviewing Josh Pate and Paul Finebaum. He also got a couple of Tennessee players. Dave was able to get a hold of Keenan Peely, who made his way to SEC Media Days this week, representing the Vols, despite having only played 1 game for them last year. Lots to love about Keenan Peely and the level of respect he's commanded from his teammates. Dave Hooker was able to speak with him. We're going to give you that interview now. This is Dave Hooker speaking with the guy who is expected to be Tennessee football's feature linebacker. Here's Dave Hooker with Keenan Peely right about now.
Live from SEC Media Days, as our presentation is brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks on Clinton Highway and in Birmingham, worktrucksllc.com. And don't forget Volunteer Automotive Group, volauto.com. Keenan Peely, who I haven't had a chance to talk to, joins us now. And Keenan, you show up to SEC Media Days. Not a lot of playing time at Tennessee under your belt. Were you at all surprised when they asked you to come?
Yeah, for sure. A little bit for sure, especially being a transfer. Really just honored that they were able to extend it to me, and excited to be here. Grateful for the opportunity. Grateful for the trust too.
Well, and none of your teammates were surprised. I've talked to several of them. They're like, he's that kind of leader. So what if he's just played one game? What does that mean to have their respect?
Means everything. It really does mean everything. Because I look up to a lot of those boys, and I'm sure they know that. I think it's just a great opportunity to be here, and if they need me here to do it, I'll do it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Okay, so for those that don't know, you're a little bit older than the average college student, right?
Yeah.
So how old we got you pegged now?
26. Just turned 26.
I just turned 50, so you're doing a lot better than me. Okay, but I'm an empty nester, and you're not. My kids are already gone to college. Talk about being a dad and having everything going on, and really just kind of almost being like a profession, even though it is college.
Yeah, definitely. No kids yet, but we'll see on the way.
Is that something you've always wanted to do?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I've always wanted a big family because I grew up in a big family. So when I look forward to that and being here in college, I just hope I'm building enough foundation that I'm ready for that when it comes.
Yeah. As far as the linebacker position of Jeremiah Tellander, that's one guy I wanted to ask you about. What do you think of his progression over the offseason?
Huge, and he came in like that. He came in with a solid mindset. Matter of fact, I tell that group in particular that came in, one of the best groups that came in that just locked in right away. And then specifically Tellander, he's one of those guys. The motor is so high, the energy is infectious, and when he's on the field, you know it.
Yeah. Another guy I want to ask you about is James Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
What's the ceiling for him? I think he can be pretty good.
He has for sure. I don't even think he's reached the ceiling yet. And he's been working like crazy this offseason, so I'm excited too to see where he goes.
Now, you talked about you all work out together.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider yourself a mentor to him?
No, I wouldn't say mentor. I feel like it puts me kind of above him. I feel like we kind of feed off each other, and really it just pushes each of us to get better. AC's also at Iraq recently, so that's been another added piece that we're working.
Arian Carter?
Yeah. Carter,
okay. Those might be no offense to you, but those might be the two most talented guys on defense.
No doubt. Freaky athletes.
Yeah.
Freaky athletes.
So playing alongside those guys, how exciting is it to get them in the right position to make plays?
I mean, defense as a whole, or really just the team as a whole, one thing I noticed since being here is just there's so much talent around you. So much talent around you, so the ceiling is high, and it's just a question: can we put it together? And that's on us. That's on us to be player-led and to build a team that can be successful.
If I would have told you that you'd be in college this long, what would you have said as a freshman?
No chance.
But
I believe you.
But in retrospect,
yeah,
with NIL and the ability to transfer, how happy are you where you are now?
Happy as I could be. Really, it's all God's plan. No matter if I wanted to be here or maybe was expected to be gone sooner, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with where I should be at this moment. So,
okay. Can you talk about your off season? I know you had the triceps injury to deal with. You said it didn't affect you much. How do you feel aside from the arm, just physically? Do you feel stronger, faster than last year?
Really, yeah, I really do. Body feels great. Best it's felt in a while. So excited to put it to the test and put it through a season.
So SEC Media Days, you'll be here and you're going to be asked about 1 million questions. What are you expecting? Are you expecting questions about expectations? Or are you expecting questions about your teammates? What do you think?
I'm honestly expecting everything, being that I haven't been a part of one. I don't know what's coming, so I'm just locked in. I'm ready for all the questions, no matter what they are. Couldn't say one thing specific.
What do you think of all the expectations, and then you have the list that all come out? Do you see that, or do you stay away from social media?
I'm not a big social media guy. Anyone that knows me, I'm not too much on there. I don't even know what the expectations are for us this year, but I'm hoping it's low. I hope we got the bottom spot because we'll surprise some people.
So you hope to get picked low?
Yeah. We don't need no hype. We don't need any of the talk about us because at the end of the day, we got to go earn it.
Yeah, nice. You've had an opportunity. I would think you were held out in spring, but you've at least seen Nico from a middle linebacker's perspective. When you watch him, whether it's on tape or whatever it might be, what do you see out of him?
I see a lot of poise and someone who can run an offense above his time. Obviously, everyone knows how talented he is, but I feel like he's able to really command offense and to move the ball.
Yeah. So, and moving forward, what are your goals this season? Anything specifically?
Want to win. Want to win championships. I think that's been the big thing. Want to compete for championships, and feel like I can play a role in that. And I feel like our team can actually get it done.
Have fun. SEC Media Days. He's Keenan Pili, your middle linebacker. I'm Dave Hooker. A presentation of all.
That was Keenan Pili speaking with Dave Hooker. Keenan Pili is, again, one of the leaders of Tennessee's defense. And you start to wonder, given all the issues facing Tennessee last year and how high they are on Keenan Pili this year, what would Tennessee have looked like had Keenan Pili stayed healthy? I mean, I can already see up front, had Cooper Mays stayed healthy, they were going to beat Florida. If Brew McCoy, Cooper Mays, and Keenan Pili all stay healthy, do they beat Missouri? Do they beat Alabama? I mean, you have to wonder with these things. It's funny, Alabama was probably the closest game they played, and it's probably the one I think they don't beat Alabama or Georgia no matter what, because I think Alabama just waited till the second half to turn it on, and they were so dominant in the trenches that I don't think it was as close as people thought. I think Alabama was significantly better, but I certainly think they beat Florida. And I know Missouri blew them out, but Tennessee was driving in a lot of those, was moving the ball on a lot of those drives against Missouri. It would just stall from Jalen Wright fumble or something like that. Do you think it's a possibility that maybe if Keenan Pili's there at linebacker, because they were getting wrecked on horizontal run plays against Missouri that day, if Keenan Pili's in there, do they make it closer? If Brew McCoy is still out there dictating coverage, does the offense actually finish the job on a lot of drives? Yeah, it's 36-7 in a bad blowout, but you could see how it could get a lot closer very quickly. So these are the type of things you wonder, and Keenan Pili is clearly, obviously, a great leader for Tennessee. The defense loves him, and the team loves him, and his talent and potential is off the charts. And obviously, he's probably one of the oldest players playing college football, so you have to think his maturity level is pretty high, too. Lots to love about Keenan Pili. This next guy we're going to bring up is no stranger to Off the Hook Sports. Cooper Mays is with our show every week. We love him. He was at SEC Media Days. It was well-deserved, too, as he's one of the leaders of the program. And although he's on our show weekly, Dave was also able to get a one-on-one interview with him, as he does. And so we're going to bring that up now, and we're going to see what Dave had to say, or what Cooper Mays had to say about joining his teammates in Dallas. This is Dave Hooker with Cooper Mays at SEC Media Days.
Live from SEC Media Days, as we're here with the one, the only Tennessee Center, Cooper Mays, brought to you by our good friends at City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Let's go, man. You're at SEC Media Days, and you're looking great.
Appreciate it. You know, a little orange and white, a little navy blue.
I like that. Now,
smile on the face.
I think, including Josh Heupel, everybody else wore Nikes, I think, but you went with the dress shoes. Why?
Went with the dress shoes. I don't know. This probably the most complimented shoe I've ever worn.
That shoe's tight.
It's like, it's called, for you guys can't see it, it's a great, I think it's called the Jack, maybe. It's from Taft. It's it's a next level kind of thing.
I mean, I walked in here and I thought, great snapper, even greater shoes.
This is what I'm trying to be here.
How excited are you about this season? You faced so much in the offseason about whether or not you were coming back, and you faced all these questions, but now it kind of feels like it's somewhat here. How excited are you?
Excited, excited as I can be. I'm not a guy that gets too high or too low, really, you know that, but I'm prepared, and I feel like I've been doing the right stuff, so I'm here for it.
You mentioned something that I didn't know in your press conference a little bit earlier, that you had, if you don't mind me asking, found faith later in your high school, your college career. Can you kind of talk about that? Because I think most people were raised in church and maybe they follow it that way, but you found faith
little bit older.
Well, I mean, I was raised in the church and you know, went to church most Sundays out of my childhood. Was always there, but you know, didn't really invest. You know, a relationship's got to be two parties, you know, meeting in the middle. And you know, I wasn't putting forth any effort. Like I would go to church and everything. Like I wasn't like an atheist or anything, but just kind of been nourishing my faith and just putting it kind of in the forefront of my mind and seeing my life through a different lens has been super different for me. Because I used to kind of think all about me and what I wanted. You know, you kind of just live through your flesh and whatever materialistically sounds good, whatever pleasure sounds good, you know, you kind of go with it. But you know, I feel like later in my life, just kind of getting older, just got to see life through a different lens. You know, all of that stuff that is right at your fingertips kind of leaves you feeling empty and, you know, doesn't really fulfill you. But, you know, the Lord is always going to be there for you. And, you know, as long as you water that relationship, he'll always meet you where you're at.
Well said. When was there a moment? When was this where you felt like you made the transition?
The biggest thing was probably my hernia surgery. When I kind of had that time, it wasn't, I mean, it's not super devastating or anything, but just had like a full week where I could kind of just be on my own and kind of just think about stuff. And, you know, it's pretty eye-opening when you kind of get out of your little normal routine of every day, so to speak. You know, I've spent a lot of my life just doing kind of the same things every day. Mm-hmm. And when you get a substantial break where you can kind of step back and kind of look at everything, you know, it changes your perspective a little bit. And
I don't think people realize how frustrating that time was for you, because not only were you hurt and you couldn't play, but you had to lay like in a prone position for how long?
A good week. I couldn't hardly get out of bed. Yeah, it was rough. You know, I didn't even really have that tough of a time with it, because I kind of found the Lord, like, as soon as I figured out what was going on with me right before my surgery, kind of like that's when it hit me that all the stuff was going to take place. And, you know, a guy named Mackenzie Milton, we've talked about him on here before. He's a former Heisman candidate, you know, would have been a first-round draft pick. About 2 games before the end of his senior season, he had not a career-ending knee injury, because he came back, but I mean, most people wouldn't come back from it. Was a different kind of player after it. And you know, he kind of spoke to me about how, oh man, not like pointless, but like how everything in this life kind of just washes away. You know, everything in this life passes away, and you know, you just die without it. So there's only one thing in this life that is everlasting and that will, you know, sustain after death and everything, and that's your soul and what you choose to do with it. So, you know, the Lord will bring you to your knees, but just hopefully you will get there before he brings you to your knees, you know.
Were you brought to your knees last year?
Oh man, I don't know if I was brought to my knees. I'm sure there's a way worse things in my life that will occur than a 6-week recovery from a hernia surgery. But definitely, I will say one thing, man. When you make plans without the Lord, they will be spoiled, you know.
It's well said. How many times do you think you'll be asked about Nico at SEC Media Days?
I'm like an hour in. I've already been asked like 2 or 3 times. So like 15 maybe, huh?
Oh, like 1,500. 1,500. Let me, because you've got like 4 media places to go. Well, let me ask you this: when it comes to being the center of attention, do you feel like, no pun intended, but do you feel like you can help him a little bit? Because everybody was talking about Cooper last September, and everybody's going to be talking about Nico this September. Can you help him with the publicity and the media requests and all that stuff?
I'm sure I could help him. I don't really know if he'll need any. I mean, he's a really intelligent kid, really got his head on straight, in my opinion. So I don't know if he'll need much help. He's been raised right, and he knows how to handle himself.
Let me ask you about this offensive line. What's the most dominant game that you feel like you guys have played that you look back, and maybe it didn't look that way to fans, but you look back and you say, man, we really gelled and played well together?
I thought a game that we did well, especially up against a really, really hard task, was Texas A&M. You know, Texas A&M last year, I think, was ranked the #1 defense maybe, or something along those lines. Maybe number one in some aspect regarding defense, and it was mainly to do with their front seven and what they did. They were really good up front, had a really good week against Bama the week before, and then, we came out there and I think we executed our game plan well and ran on them. And, a lot of people think that we're just a team that just throws everything around, super explosive, but I feel like we did a good job, putting it on the ground and doing what we wanted with it.
What was the key to that week? Leading up to just healthy, maybe.
Really, I think the biggest key was just us getting our assignments right. They had a really unorthodox defense where they got 3 down linemen and their kind of backers flowed and played interchangeably. So it messes up your scheme a little bit as far as spots, but we did pretty well. I think we did our part.
You've talked a lot about Amari in the time that we've been doing our podcast brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, but specifically, how has he maybe made you better? I ask him the same question, but you guys are going against each other in practice all the time.
Oh, just an everyday battle between two guys, that are trying to get to the top of their craft is always gonna make somebody better, or both guys better in that regard. So yeah, I mean, it's just every day. We've been here for 5 years together now, and that's who I go against every day.
Okay, will you do me a favor? Will you make a mental note? And then next week, I'll ask you, you don't have to say who it was. I'll ask you the dumbest question that you were asked at SEC Media Days. Got it. Done. Love it. You got to tune in next week. Hit like and subscribe. It's that simple. He is Cooper Mays. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of.
That was Cooper Mays speaking with Dave Hooker. He is one of the most mature people on this football team, and he's one of the greatest leaders. Guys, it's funny. Kevin Mays was a draft pick. Cade Mays was the most highly touted recruit of the family. I think Cooper Mays may end up going down as the most beloved Vol of the Mays family. I mean, this guy has done everything right since he stepped on campus in 2020, and he has been totally committed to this program. He's been so loyal to all of the guys around him. I mean, he is just a great teammate, great player, and arguably the most important player on the team beyond Nico Male Ava. That's just kind of the way things work. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit before we get out of here about the news of the Big 12 and Florida State. Brett, we talked last week about the rumors that the SEC and the Big Ten were uninterested in Florida State and Clemson should they ever leave the ACC, and that the Big 12 was the one who would make the move. Dave and I felt that the Big 12 was just leaking that information because they wanted other teams to try to line up to get into the Big 12 out of excitement that this is a possibility. Well, Brett McMurphy of the Action Network has now since reported that the Big Ten and the SEC are unlikely to add Florida State if they leave the ACC and the ACC then survives. That's because reportedly the Big Ten and the SEC have a problem with FSU having been a, quote, disruptive partner, I would assume, to the ACC, and that adding FSU doesn't make financial sense. What does disruptive partner mean? Well, it just has everything to do with how FSU has been when they've been stuck in the ACC. And the Big Ten and the SEC are like, would you be that way with us? Now, obviously, that doesn't make a lot of sense because the Big Ten and the SEC are the top dogs on campus. FSU obviously would be that way with them. So I'm going to do something that I don't really do a lot. I'm going to call BS. I think this is still the Big 12 leaking stuff about FSU, and that is because they want to try to get it out there that they are the favorites to land FSU. I don't believe for 1 second that the Big Ten or the SEC wouldn't add Florida State. If you want to tell me the Big Ten wouldn't, solely because of the whole AAU rule for academic schools, that's fine. I totally get that. But I refuse to believe that the SEC wouldn't add FSU if FSU were available, and the same with Clemson. Doesn't make financial sense. It makes all the sense in the world. You can't tell me it's about geographic footprint anymore because the SEC already has Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and schools around it. That doesn't make any sense. The SEC just went and added Texas when they already had Texas A&M. So it has nothing to do with geographical footprint whatsoever. I'm not saying geographical footprint is not a thing. because I do think the SEC would willingly add North Carolina and Virginia if they could. They want 2 schools from that area. So expanding geographical footprint does matter. But brand size is big too. And FSU is a rare brand in college football. Many people will say that, well, North Florida, they're in the heart of the North Florida area, the Florida Panhandle, and that's the least populated part of Florida. You don't really go by that, though, when you look at schools. You look at brand size of schools in general. I mean, is Tuscaloosa a big city? No. Alabama's still an amazing brand. So you go with the brand size of the school, not necessarily the TV market size or the surrounding market size of where you're at. So I think that this is somebody with an ulterior motive leaking these things, because I just don't believe that these don't seem like legitimate reasons for the SEC to not add FSU. Florida State makes perfect financial sense, even more so than Clemson. And more importantly, the idea that they've been a disruptive partner. Well, yes, but they've been one with the ACC, and they wouldn't be that way with the SEC. That just doesn't make sense. Nor would they be that way with the Big Ten. They were that way with the ACC because they're trying to get out of the ACC because they should want to get out of the ACC. Is the SEC loyal to the ACC? Again, you want to talk disruptive partners. Texas has been a disruptive partner to every conference it's ever been in and every conference it's ever affiliated with and every conference it's ever toyed with for the last 50 years. That didn't stop the SEC from going to add them. What they said is, we'll add you and you play by our rules. We don't play by yours. So I don't see for 1 second why that would be the case, but the SEC wouldn't want to add Florida State. They'd want to add Florida State. Florida State may not be their favorite. I still do think North Carolina and Virginia are their favorites because I think geographical footprint is a factor. I don't think it's the main priority. North Carolina and Virginia do have solid brand sizes, though. But I also think FSU and Clemson, they'd willingly add them. So I just think that's laughable. I think somebody from the Big 12 is still out there leaking these stories because they want it out there that the Big 12 is going to be the next power conference. And if they can leak it for Florida State and maybe Clemson, they can get other teams try to line up to go join them. And maybe this too. Maybe this is an overall workaround to get more teams in the ACC to sign on to leaving, so the ACC can collapse. Because the way they get out of this grant of rights deal the most, the easiest way to do it is for a majority of ACC teams to vote to kill the ACC. Those ACC teams would do that if they all knew they had a home after leaving the ACC. Now, there's some collusion that would have to go on that would probably be illegal. But it's something that could definitely be done. So I don't think this is over. We're going to see how this plays out. For those who don't remember, Florida State was offered to join the SEC in 1992 when Florida was there, and they actually declined. It's very clear they declined because they wanted the easier road. They were independent at the time, so they got accepted into the ACC because they were scared to play in the SEC. That's a proven fact. Derek Owen Jr. brings it up himself. Bobby Bowden would cut someone out. I'm sure he's rolled over in his grave to this point. Derek, that's true, but back in the day when Florida State made that decision, they didn't realize how consolidated college football would become in the power conferences. I think if it were today, they would make a different decision to go to the SEC. And to be fair to Florida State, I actually want to bring this point up. Florida State had been trying to join the SEC for decades before 92. There were multiple times in the 80s, the 70s, the 60s. The 60s specifically, after Georgia Tech and Tulane left, Florida State tried to get into the SEC, and the SEC kept turning them down, probably strong-arming them. So, Florida probably strong-arming them to not allow Florida State in. But so I think when the time finally came in 92 and the SEC wanted them, Florida State's like, we're already a powerhouse. You guys have rejected us every time. And also, we'd rather have the easier road to the ACC. And it worked out for them because they had, as Derek said, they were the best program of the 90s year in and year out. Derek, I probably agree with you. You can make a case for Nebraska, but Florida State definitely right there. And they set a record of, 15 straight years of top 5 finishes and constantly the top 10 for all of them. That'll probably never be broken. But also a streak they never would have had they been in the SEC. So it was a smart move by Florida State. But the truth of the matter is I'm bringing all this up to say that, look, I don't believe for a second that the SEC is not interested in Florida State. I just don't. And I don't believe that they're not interested in Clemson. Just to add to this reporting, though, the Big 12, according to Sports Illustrated, is also bullish on its chances to add Florida State and Clemson. That is, that's something that's added. And so part of this is that, again, we still don't know what's going to happen with the ACC. Can Florida State and Clemson legally get out of the ACC. We don't know. They got to get out of the grant of rights. And again, I'm still not buying that they would be denied by the SEC or the Big Ten. The bidding war for conferences in sports is going to be the SEC and the Big Ten fighting like hell for North Carolina and Virginia. That's going to be the story long term. I think both leagues want North Carolina and Virginia. And they want them for different reasons. The Big Ten wants to expand into the East Coast in general, and North Carolina and Virginia are great schools. They could expand into the South. Those are both AAU schools, so they fit. The SEC wants to expand its geographical footprint to those two states to have all states of the old Confederacy in the conference. And those are the two best schools in terms of fan bases in those two states. Virginia actually joins Florida State and Clemson as the only three ACC schools to compete with the SEC in terms of revenue and financial power. It's a lot of people don't know that. So it would be very intriguing how that plays out. Derek, you said it's dumb not to add FSU and Clemson. I agree, but you did say might as well throw in Georgia Tech and North Carolina. No, I think it's Virginia and North Carolina. Maybe Virginia Tech and North Carolina. And also if the Big Ten expands, they would do Virginia Tech and NC State. I think Georgia Tech has kissed their chances at rejoining the SEC goodbye. They left in the 1960s. It was a stupid decision for them to leave, but they did. And because of that, they're never coming back in. They just aren't the same level of popularity that they once were. This is an interesting, one of the things I'd love to do one day, though, is go back and say, what if Florida State had chosen to go to the SEC in 1992? So much of college football would be different at this time. Elias says expansion has become so reckless it's going to eventually destroy mid-sized programs in the Big Ten and the SEC. Well, what I think is going to happen is it actually may save them, Elias. I agree with you in the short term. That's going to happen. But I think what's going to happen is as more teams get to those two conferences, and then there's a third, like the Big 12 or whatever, you'll see college football roughly be the size it was with two tiers anyway before you had a Power 2 or Power 3. But back then you had a Power 5 with 70 teams. Now you might have a Power 2 or Power 3 with roughly 72 teams. And that Power 3 is going to evenly distribute the TV revenue to all their teams. So you'll see them compete still relatively well. So I think this is all going to actually inadvertently work itself out. It's just the process to get there is going to be long and brutal and honestly not pretty, So that's just how this is going to be. Reformations are messy. If you study history, reformations are messy. They always, even the ones with the happiest endings, they're messy. And right now, college football is in the messiness of a reformation that we hope will make the sport look significantly better long term. Still don't know how that's all going to play out, but I will say that the root cause of this is the big takeaway from this is don't believe that the SEC is not interested in FSU. I'm not saying Brett McMurphy's reporting is not great. I believe him. I think a source did leak that to him, and I do believe the Sports Illustrated reporting. I believe the Just Wayne reporting. I believe somebody with an ulterior motive is leaking that, though. I don't believe for 1 second that the SEC wouldn't add FSU and Clemson. They'd do that in a heartbeat because of the financial power that those two schools bring. So that's where I'm at. I want to thank Dave for hopping on the show at the beginning before he had to roll out to SEC Media Days. And I want to thank him for getting all the interviews. I want to thank you guys for all tuning in. We are about to begin day three of SEC Media Days is already underway. So we're going to have more coverage of that. Dave should have an interview with Greg Sankey soon enough. So there's plenty to still be excited about going forward with SEC Media Days, even as Tennessee is no longer there. We will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Please hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on. With Dave Hooker, I am Caleb Calhoun. This has been a presentation